Maya had always hated being in front of a camera. She was shy, withdrawn, the kind of person who smiled only when someone else did first. But after a breakup that left her confidence in ruins, she told herself it was time to start saying yes to new experiences. That's how she found the Craigslist ad. Local photographer looking for natural faces. No modeling experience required. Just bring your smile. It sounded harmless, even sweet in a strange way. The photographer's messages were polite, professional, even charming. He said he liked candid emotions, real laughter, real sunlight. His name was Evan, and his tone online felt safe enough that Maya agreed to meet him in a public place downtown, near the old warehouse district. The sun was low when she arrived, turning the cracked pavement into liquid gold. The air smelled faintly of metal and dust. Evan stood waiting near a graffiti wall, camera already in hand. He looked normal, older than his profile photo, with kind eyes behind wireframe glasses. He smiled when he saw her, and she smiled back. First, everything felt normal. He had her stand by a brick wall, walk along the street, laugh over nothing. The click of the shutter was rhythmic, calming. For the first time in months, she felt seen in a good way. Then he started asking for small changes. Look over your shoulder. Tilt your head just a little more. Pretend you're watching someone you love. His voice dropped softer with each request, almost whispering. The camera got closer. After 20 minutes, the warmth of the sun had started to fade, and the shadows stretched long behind them. She noticed his smile had changed. It wasn't the kind that invited comfort anymore. It was fixed, almost studied. When she said she should probably head home, he nodded, but didn't lower the camera. Wait, he said. Just one more. Don't smile this time. The last click of the shutter was sharp, echoing through the empty street. He lowered the camera, thanked her softly, and told her he'd send the pictures later that night. She walked away feeling an odd tightness in her chest, unable to explain why she suddenly felt exposed. That night, she kept refreshing her inbox, but no email ever came. When she finally checked Craigslist again, the ad was gone. Curious, she searched for the photographer's username and froze. A new ad had appeared, posted just minutes earlier. The title read, "Looking for another model. Must resemble her." The picture in the post was hers. Same brick wall, same sunset, same uneasy half-smile. Her stomach dropped. She tried to click on the image, but the link refreshed itself, glitching into a new page. Another ad. This one had a title that made her skin crawl. Smile for me again. The photo was closer this time, cropped tighter, right to her face. Eyes wide, lips parted, like she just realized something terrible a second too late. Maya deleted her browser history, shut her laptop, and tried to convince herself it was a mistake. But that night, as she lay in bed, her phone buzzed. No caller ID. When she answered, she heard a faint mechanical sound. A camera shutter. No words, just that soft, rhythmic click. She hung up and tried to breathe, her hands trembling. In the darkness, her reflection stared back from the black screen. Behind her, for just a moment, she thought she saw the faint glint of glass, a reflection of something circular, cold, and watching. The next morning, she went to file a report, but there was no record of any Craigslist user by the name Evan. The ad had vanished completely, like it never existed. Even her messages with him had been deleted somehow. Days passed. She started noticing things she couldn't ignore. Her face showing up in random search results. Anonymous comments under photos she never uploaded. "You have the perfect smile," one said. Another, "I found her again." The last message came a week later. It wasn't an email this time. It was a small envelope on her doorstep, sealed with no return address. Inside was a single printed photo, her standing by the same graffiti wall. But in this one, there was someone else in the frame. A shadow behind her shoulder. And beneath it, in red ink, "Let's do another shoot soon." That night, she removed every mirror from her apartment. But across town, a new Craigslist ad went up at 3:47 a.m. Photographer seeks friendly face. No experience needed. Just bring your smile. And the photo attached wasn't Maya's anymore. It was someone new. Tom wasn't looking for anything fancy. Just a couch sturdy enough to fill the empty space in his new living room. The divorce had left him with an apartment that echoed, the kind of place that made silence feel like judgment. He spent his evenings scrolling through Craigslist, half looking for furniture, half trying to fill time. Then he found it. Free couch barely used. Must pick up tonight. The photos showed a dark green sofa, slightly worn on the edges but clean. The poster, someone named Andy, said he was moving out in a hurry. Tom figured it was his lucky day. He texted the number and got a quick reply. Still available. Come by after 9. Door will be open. It was late, but Tom didn't think much of it. People on Craigslist were odd sometimes. He loaded a dolly into his truck and drove across town to a quiet neighborhood lined with small, tired houses. The porch light at the address flickered weakly. When he stepped inside, the house was almost empty. Just the couch sitting in the middle of the living room, as if placed there for him. The air smelled faintly of dust and something metallic. He called out, "Hello?" But no one answered. There was a folded note on the armrest. "Take good care of it." He felt uneasy for a moment but brushed it off. He loaded the couch, left a polite text thanking the owner, and drove home. By midnight, the couch was sitting perfectly in place against the living room wall. The next day he noticed something odd. A faint clicking noise when he sat down. He leaned over, thinking maybe a spring had snapped. That's when he saw it, a small black dot under the armrest like the lens of a phone camera. He stared at it for a long time, heartbeat quickening. Finally, he took a knife, cut into the fabric, and pulled out a tiny, wired camera, barely bigger than a coin. It wasn't even hidden well. The red light blinked once, then went dark. He threw it away immediately, telling himself it was probably an old security gadget or some kid's prank. But that night, as he watched TV, he noticed the faint glow of his laptop webcam. It was on. He slammed it shut, his breath catching in his throat. The next morning, he got an email from an anonymous address. No message, just an attached video file. Against his better judgment, he opened it. The video was of him and his daughter, Lucy, sitting on the couch watching a movie 2 nights before. The angle was perfect, steady, close, personal. He froze. The camera he'd found had been off since that night. This footage was new. He unplugged everything, Wi-Fi, router, even his phone. But the emails kept coming. Short clips, each one from slightly different angles. Sometimes they were normal moments, him cooking dinner, Lucy reading on the floor. Other times they were closer. Too close. In one, Lucy looked directly at the camera, as if she sensed someone watching. Tom contacted the police, but there wasn't much they could do. The IP addresses traced back to random countries, bouncing between servers. They told him to stay vigilant. As if that helped him sleep. For days, he refused to sit on the couch. He moved it out to the garage, covered it with a tarp. But the emails didn't stop. The subject lines became taunting. "Why did you move it? You looked good on the couch today. She looks just like her mother." He started checking the locks twice every night. Lucy noticed the tension, asked him if they were safe. He told her yes, but his voice cracked on the word. One night, he woke up to the sound of something scraping against the floor downstairs. He grabbed the baseball bat from under his bed and crept down the hall. The living room light was off, but he could see the shape of the couch in the dim streetlight filtering through the curtains. The tarp was gone. He took a cautious step forward. The air felt thick, as if the whole house were holding its breath. There, sitting on the couch, was a phone, placed perfectly in the center cushion. The screen was lit, showing an open Craigslist page. Free couch barely used. Must pick up tonight. The picture in the listing was his living room. His couch. He stared at it for a long time, pulse hammering in his ears. Then the phone buzzed and a new message appeared on the screen. "Don't throw it away." The words burned into his mind long after he ran back upstairs and locked himself in his room. The next morning, he dragged the couch out to the curb. By evening, it was gone. He felt a strange relief, a lightness in his chest, like exhaling after weeks of tension. But when he got home from work the next day, there was another note on his door. Same handwriting as before. Take good care of it. He opened the door slowly, dread rising like static. The couch was back, sitting exactly where it had been. Ella never liked living alone. After moving to a new city for her job, the walls of her one-bedroom apartment started to feel like they were closing in. Nights were the worst, the kind of quiet that made every refrigerator hum sound like a whisper. Rent was steep and loneliness was steeper, so she turned to Craigslist. Roommate wanted. Friendly, tidy, no drama. $600 per month, utilities included. Within hours, she had a reply. A woman named Leah wrote back, cheerful, articulate, and offering to meet that same evening. The quickness should have been a red flag, but Leah's tone was disarming. She said she was new in town too, working remotely, and just needed somewhere safe and quiet. They met at a small cafe downtown. Leah was pretty, well-dressed, and spoke with the calm confidence of someone who had nothing to hide. She laughed easily, and her voice had a warmth that made Ella relax. By the end of coffee, it felt like they'd known each other for years. A week later, Leah moved in. First, everything was perfect. Leah was clean, polite, and respectful. She even cooked dinner for Ella a few times. They stayed up late watching old movies, sharing stories about bad dates and childhood pets. Ella couldn't believe her luck. It almost felt too good to be true. Then the little things started. It began when Ella went into the bathroom one morning and noticed 2 toothbrushes in the holder. She only had one green. The second was blue, identical in design, but not hers. She shrugged it off, thinking Leah must have bought a spare. Then groceries started disappearing. Small things. An apple here, a yogurt cup there. Leah always apologized, smiling with embarrassment. Sorry, I thought that was mine. It wasn't strange enough to worry about. Not yet. A few weeks later, Ella came home early from work and heard voices inside. She froze in the hallway. Leah was talking to someone. A low male voice she didn't recognize. When Ella opened the door, the apartment was empty. The TV was off. Were you on a call? She asked later that evening. Leah looked up from her laptop and smiled faintly. No. Why? That night, Ella couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening. Around 3 a.m., she heard soft footsteps. Not in the hallway, inside her room. She bolted upright, but the sound was gone. The apartment was still. The next morning, Leah was already in the kitchen, humming to herself, making pancakes. Rough night? She asked, cheerful as ever. Ella tried to shake it off. She told herself she was imagining things, that new places always felt strange. But her unease kept growing. One Saturday, while Leah was out, Ella decided to do some cleaning. She opened Leah's closet to vacuum and froze. There were boxes stacked neatly in the corner, all labeled in thick black marker. Her name was written on them. Ella's stuff. Inside were things she recognized. A scarf she thought she'd lost. An old perfume bottle. Even her spare apartment key. Her hands trembled as she lifted another box. Inside were dozens of printed photos, all of her. Some looked like screenshots from her social media, but others weren't. They were taken inside the apartment. Sleeping, cooking, sitting at her desk. She backed away, heart pounding. When Leah came home that evening, Ella tried to act normal. She couldn't confront her, not yet. She needed proof. That night, she went back on Craigslist and typed in the apartment's address. What she found made her stomach drop. There were multiple listings for the same apartment, all posted under different names. The rent prices varied slightly, but the photos were the same. Each post described a roommate with identical details. Quiet, blonde, trusting. Her own photo was at the top of one ad. She stared at the screen, frozen. The post was dated from 2 weeks before Leah moved in. When she looked up, Leah was standing in the doorway of her room. No sound, no warning. Just standing there, smiling faintly. Can't sleep? Leah asked softly. Ella's laptop snapped shut. Yeah, just couldn't. Leah stepped closer. You shouldn't look for roommates online, she whispered. You never know who's really moving in. The next morning, Leah was gone. Her things, her boxes, everything. It was as if she'd never existed. Ella packed up and moved out a week later. She couldn't stay in that apartment. But curiosity got the better of her one night. She checked Craigslist again. A new listing had appeared. Roommate wanted. Must be quiet, blonde, trusting. The photo was new this time. It wasn't Ella. But in the reflection of the apartment window, just faintly, Leah's face was visible, watching. Ryan and Sarah had always had a soft spot for animals. Their own dog, Daisy, had passed away the year before, and ever since, Sarah would stop to pet every dog she saw. So when she stumbled across a Craigslist post titled, "Lost Golden Retriever. Please help bring him home," her heart immediately ached. The post was simple. A man named Aaron wrote that his dog, Buddy, had run off during a hike near the old timber trails just outside town. He offered a small reward for anyone who could help look or share information. The photo showed a smiling golden retriever sitting on a forest path, tongue out, collar shining in the sunlight. Sarah showed the post to Ryan over breakfast. "We could take a drive out there this weekend," she said. "Even if we don't find him, it'll be good to get some air." Ryan hesitated. He wasn't the type to jump into random online things, but the look in Sarah's eyes, that quiet need to help, convinced him. They texted the number listed, and Aaron replied almost instantly. "Thank you so much. I've been looking every evening after dark. Buddy's a sweet boy. If you can come tonight, I'll meet you near the trailhead." The speed of his response felt strange, but kindness often looks strange in a cynical world. So they agreed. By the time they reached the old forest, the sky was already bleeding into dusk. The trailhead was marked by a rusted sign and surrounded by thick, whispering pines. No one else was around. The gravel crunched under their tires as they pulled over. They texted Aaron, "We're here." No reply. "Maybe he's running late," Sarah said, stepping out of the car. The air was cool, damp with the smell of earth. Somewhere deep in the woods, a dog barked, faint and distant. "See? That's him," she said, hopeful. Ryan grabbed a flashlight from the glove box, the beam cutting through the dark like a blade. "Let's not go too far," he muttered. The trail swallowed them quickly. The barking came again, closer now, followed by the crack of branches underfoot. The forest seemed alive, too alive. Every sound echoed differently, as if someone else were walking just behind them. Sarah called out, "Buddy, come here, boy." The barking stopped. The silence that followed was thick and unnatural. Then a whistle, long, high, and steady, drifted through the trees. Ryan turned in a slow circle, the light trembling in his hand. "Aaron?" he called out. "Is that you?" No response. They pressed on another 100 feet until they found something strange. A leash lying across the path. No collar, no tags, just the leash, frayed at one end as if torn free. Sarah crouched to pick it up, her hands shaking. "Maybe he broke loose," she said. Ryan wanted to believe that, but something in the air had shifted. The woods no longer felt empty. Then they both heard it breathing. Close. The flashlight flickered across the trees, and for a split second, it caught the shape of someone standing between the trunks. A tall figure, still as stone, wearing a dark hoodie. "Hello," Ryan called out, voice unsteady. The figure didn't move. Sarah grabbed his arm. "Let's go." They backed away slowly, then turned and hurried down the trail, the crunch of gravel beneath their shoes sounding like thunder. The flashlight beam bounced wildly, and every shadow looked like it was following. When they reached the car, Ryan fumbled with the keys. The woods behind them were silent again. Too silent. No barking, no whistling, nothing. Just that heavy feeling of being watched. As soon as the headlights cut on, something caught their attention. A note tucked under the wiper. Ryan stepped out to grab it, hands trembling. The paper was damp from dew, the writing jagged and hurried. "Thanks for looking. He likes you." No signature. They sped home without speaking, the night pressing in on them. The next day, Sarah checked Craigslist again. The post was gone. When she searched for it, A new one had appeared instead. Same dog, same photo, but the title was slightly different. Buddy found. Thank you, Sarah. She stared at the screen, heart pounding. She hadn't told Aaron her name. Later that week, they started finding small things on their doorstep. A chew toy, a half-empty bag of dog treats, even a muddy tennis ball. Ryan tried to laugh it off, saying maybe it was neighborhood kids. But every item was the same brand they used to buy for Daisy. On the third night, Sarah woke to a sound outside the bedroom window. A low whistle, the same one from the forest. She grabbed Ryan's arm, shaking him awake. "He's here," she whispered. Ryan jumped up, but by the time he pulled the curtain back, there was nothing. Just the soft outline of paw prints in the dew-covered grass, leading away into the darkness. They moved out the next month. Years later, Ryan still swears he sometimes hears that same whistle when he walks Daisy's old path through the park. The same haunting note, floating between the trees. Only now, it always comes from behind him. Janet was exhausted. Not just from work, not just from life, but from the constant struggle of being one step away from everything falling apart. Her old Toyota had been acting up for weeks, coughing and rattling with every turn of the ignition. She needed to sell it fast before it died completely. With her son's tuition due and rent climbing higher every month, the car was the only thing she could liquidate quickly. She took a few photos in the parking lot of her apartment building, posted them on Craigslist under used Toyota, needs minor repairs, $2,800 OBO, and tried not to think about how empty her bank account was. Within hours, she got a reply. "I can give you $3,000 cash if you deliver it to my shop. I collect old models. No haggling." It sounded too good to be true, and maybe that's why she wanted to believe it. The message came from someone named Rick, who said he was a mechanic. He even attached photos of his workshop. A dim garage filled with old muscle cars and tool racks. The address he sent was on the edge of town, just off an old industrial road where the streetlights flickered and died. She told herself it would be fine. It was just a sale. That evening, as the sun slipped below the horizon, Janet drove toward the address. The road grew quieter the farther she went. No houses, no gas stations, just the echo of her own tires. The garage came into view. A large corrugated metal building with a single light glowing from inside. The door was half open, spilling a line of pale yellow onto the gravel. Rick stepped out to greet her, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. He was tall, older, with a beard that didn't quite hide the smirk tugging at his lips. "You must be Janet," he said. "You came fast." "Yeah," she laughed awkwardly. "Didn't want the car to die before I sold it." He chuckled. "Let's have a look." Inside, the garage smelled of oil and burnt rubber. Tools lined the walls, and the concrete floor was stained dark with years of repairs. In the corner, a radio hummed low, some country song playing beneath the buzz of fluorescent lights. Rick walked slowly around the car, running his fingers along the frame like he was tracing its history. "You've taken care of her," he said. "Most people don't." "I try," Janet replied, trying to sound casual. He crouched to look underneath. "I can fix the transmission," he said. "But I'll need to check under the hood first." "Go ahead and pop it open." She reached inside and pulled the lever. The hood creaked upward with a sigh. "Come around here a sec," he said. "Want to show you something." She hesitated, then walked over. His tone was still calm, professional, but something about the way he stood made her uneasy. When she got close enough, he suddenly slammed the hood shut, hard enough to make her flinch. "Sorry," he said, smiling faintly. "Didn't mean to scare you, just testing the latch." Her pulse was racing. "Right?" she murmured. He stepped closer. "You came alone?" "Yeah," she said, forcing a smile. "My son's at home." He nodded slowly, eyes never leaving hers. "Good. No distractions." Something in his voice changed, lower now, heavier. The air in the garage felt different, like the oxygen had thinned. He turned toward the door and, almost casually, reached up to slide the metal latch closed. The sound echoed. Janet froze. "Why'd you lock that?" "Don't worry," he said. It's just for safety. You'd be surprised how many people wander in at night. Her instincts screamed at her to leave. She forced a nervous laugh. I think I'll head out. You can call if you're still interested. He tilted his head slightly. But we haven't finished. He stepped closer again, the faint scuff of his boots on concrete loud in the silence. She backed away, bumping into a workbench cluttered with tools. Stay right there, he said softly. Her hand brushed against something. A wrench, heavy and cold. She grabbed it. He noticed. The smirk vanished. You don't want to do that, he said. Her voice shook. Open the door. They stood in silence for a moment, the tension thick enough to cut. Then, from outside, the sound of tires crunching gravel, another car pulling up. Rick's head turned just slightly. It was enough. Janet bolted for the door, slammed the latch upward, and stumbled into the night air just as headlights filled the lot. Another customer was arriving, a young man in his 20s, looking confused. Hey, I'm here about the Mustang, he called out. Rick stood in the doorway, face blank now. You're early, he muttered. Janet didn't wait. She jumped into her Toyota and tore out of the lot, gravel spitting behind her. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost missed the turn back to the main road. By the time she got home, she was sobbing. Not from fear, but from the shock of how close she'd come to disappearing. A week later, she checked Craigslist again out of morbid curiosity. The ad for Rick's shop was gone. In its place was a new post. Same photos. Same workshop. The title read, Used Toyota for sale. Owner still available. Her exact car. Her exact license plate. When Evan moved into his new apartment building downtown, it felt like a fresh start. The kind of sterile, modern place with white hallways, chrome fixtures, and the faint smell of detergent that made everything feel clean, safe. Even. He'd just gone through a messy breakup, and Craigslist had been his salvation. Cheap rent, month-to-month lease, utilities included. It sounded perfect. The building was quiet, mostly older tenants who kept to themselves. Except for the guy in apartment 9. Evan met him the first week he moved in. A wiry man in his early 40s, always wearing a faded denim jacket, camera slung over his shoulder. I'm Mason, he'd said, his voice gravelly but calm. I do photography, mostly street work. Faces, movement, the unnoticed moments. You know? Evan had nodded politely, though something about Mason's eyes unsettled him. They lingered too long, observed too much. Still, he brushed it off. City people were strange. That didn't make them dangerous. For the first few weeks, life was normal. Work, takeout dinners, late-night movies. But then small things started to happen. At first, they were easy to ignore. A faint sound of clicking in the hallway at odd hours like a camera shutter. The feeling that someone was watching when he left his apartment. Then one morning, he noticed something taped to his door. A Polaroid photo. It showed the hallway outside his apartment, the very spot where he was standing now. He laughed nervously, thinking maybe it was some weird prank. But when he looked closer, his stomach dropped. The timestamp printed on the corner was from 3:14 a.m. While he was asleep, he told the landlord, who brushed it off. Mason's harmless, she said. He's been here for years. Probably just one of his art projects. Evan tried to believe that, but over the next few days more photos appeared. One on his doormat, one slipped under his door. Each one closer, more invasive. His front door handle, the inside of his window, his living room when the blinds were slightly open. He started keeping the curtains drawn. He changed his locks. He even installed a door camera from Amazon, just to prove to himself that nothing was wrong. But the footage only made things worse. On the third night, he woke to the faint click-click sound again. He checked his phone, opened the app, and froze. The live feed showed Mason, standing directly in front of his door, camera raised, taking photos one after another. The light from the flash reflected in his hollow eyes. Evan shouted through the door, voice trembling, I'm calling the cops. The clicking stopped. Mason turned toward the camera, staring directly into it. For a long, unbearable moment, he didn't move. Then he lifted one hand, not in apology, but in a slow, deliberate wave. The next morning, Evan reported it to the police. They came, wrote down notes, but Mason was calm and collected when they questioned him. "I was photographing the hallway for a lighting test," he explained. "He's paranoid." They warned him to stay away from Evan, but that was all they could do. That night, Evan couldn't sleep. Every noise from the hallway made his heart pound. At 2 a.m., the sound came again, faint footsteps, slow, measured. He turned off the lights, crept toward the peephole and looked out. Nothing. The hallway was empty. Then his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You shouldn't spy on people, Evan. Not polite." He dropped the phone, his pulse spiking. He'd never given Mason his number. He grabbed his jacket and bolted for the elevator, determined to leave the building for the night. But when the doors slid open, his breath caught. The small space inside was wallpapered with photos. His photos, hundreds of them, covering every inch of the metal walls. Shots of him eating, sleeping, brushing his teeth, even sitting shirtless at his desk. Every image printed, arranged carefully like an art exhibit. At the very center was a final photo, larger than the rest, Evan asleep, his face peaceful, the timestamp showing last night at 3:12 a.m. He stumbled backward, trembling so hard his knees nearly gave out. The elevator door began to close again, trapping him with the wall of his own stolen life. Suddenly, a voice came from behind him. "Do you like it?" He turned. Mason stood at the end of the hall, camera in hand, the flash glinting faintly in the dark. His voice was calm, almost kind. "I wanted to show you how beautiful you look when you're unaware. Pure. Honest." Evan ran. Down the stairs, through the lobby, out into the rain. He didn't stop until he reached his car, hands shaking too badly to fit the key into the ignition. He drove until dawn, never looking back. By the next day, he'd packed his things and vanished from the building. A week later, the Craigslist listing for his old apartment reappeared. Same photos, same description. But there was one new picture added at the end of the gallery. A photo of Evan standing in the elevator, staring up at the camera, eyes wide, mouth slightly open, the last moment before the door closed. Lauren needed the money. That was the only reason she'd ever consider taking a job from Craigslist, especially one that sounded so off. The post read, "Evening babysitter needed. Quiet neighborhood. Must be punctual. Cash paid same night." The message was brief, written by someone named Mrs. Hill. There was no photo, no profile, and when Lauren texted the number, the reply came within seconds. "You seem responsible. Can you start tonight? 6 p.m. sharp." It was abrupt, but Lauren was desperate. College tuition, rent, groceries, all piling up faster than she could manage. So she agreed. The address led her out of town, to a quiet cul-de-sac where the houses stood too far apart, their windows dark behind skeletal trees. The sky was already bruised purple, clouds rolling low as the last light disappeared. When she pulled up, the house looked ordinary. Clean lawn, white shutters, porch light glowing. But as she got closer, she noticed something strange. The windows were covered from the inside with thick black curtains. The door opened before she could knock. Lauren, a woman in her mid-40s, stood there. Neat hair, polite smile, eyes that didn't quite match the rest of her face. Something behind them felt hollow. "Yes, Mrs. Hill," Lauren said. "I'm here about the babysitting job." "Good," Mrs. Hill replied. "Come in. Quickly, please." Inside, the house was spotless but unnervingly still. No photos, no clutter. Just bare walls, muted colors, and a faint humming noise she couldn't place. Mrs. Hill gestured toward the staircase. "My daughter's asleep upstairs," she said. "Her name is Emma. She's 8. She shouldn't wake up, but if she does, just sit with her until she falls back asleep." "Okay," Lauren nodded. "Do you want me to check on her now?" Mrs. Hill hesitated. "No, not yet. She doesn't like strangers watching her sleep." That was the first moment Lauren felt a chill. Something about the phrasing, "doesn't like strangers watching her sleep," sounded off. Mrs. Hill handed her a small wad of cash. "I'll be home by midnight. No visitors. Don't answer the phone." And with that, she was gone. Lauren sat in the living room, scrolling through her phone, trying to ignore the faint static sound that seemed to come from somewhere inside the house. The clock ticked slowly. 9:30, 10 o'clock, 10:15. Then, faintly, a soft creak from upstairs. She froze, listening. Another sound followed, a slow, deliberate footstep. "Emma?" she called out, voice shaky. Silence. She grabbed her phone and turned on the flashlight, moving toward the staircase. Each step groaned beneath her feet. The hall upstairs was narrow, lined with closed doors. Only one, at the end, had light spilling from beneath it. She took a breath and opened it. The room was small, painted pink, filled with children's toys that looked untouched. The bed was empty, sheets folded neatly, pillows in place. But there was someone else in the room. Across the wall, several old photographs were pinned, all showing the same little girl sleeping in the same bed, taken from different angles. Some in daylight, some in darkness. Lauren felt her chest tighten. Her hands trembled as she picked up one of the photos from the dresser. It was new, printed on glossy paper. And in the corner of the frame, reflected faintly in the window, she saw her own silhouette. It had been taken tonight. Her breath caught. She turned toward the closet, which stood slightly ajar. The humming noise was louder now, a mechanical whirring, like a small motor. She stepped closer and pushed the door open. Inside, wedged between boxes, was an old camera on a tripod, red recording light blinking faintly. Next to it, a small screen displayed live footage of the room, her standing there now, framed perfectly in the center. Behind the screen, something moved. A figure. Tall, thin, face hidden under a pale mask, stepped out from the shadows, holding another camera up to its eye. Lauren stumbled backward, heart racing. "Who are you?" she screamed. No answer. Just the sound of the shutter, click, 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 echoing in the small room. She bolted, tripping down the stairs, nearly falling as she reached the front door. But it wouldn't open. The lock had been changed. She turned, sobbing now, and saw the faint glow of a phone on the kitchen counter. A new text appeared on the screen. "She doesn't like strangers watching her sleep." Lauren backed away as footsteps descended the stairs, slow and deliberate. The masked figure was coming down, camera still raised. In desperation, she ran toward the back door and threw her weight against it. The wood splintered, and she stumbled into the cold night air, sprinting barefoot into the woods behind the house. She didn't stop until her lungs burned and her body ached. When she finally turned to look back, the house was completely dark, as if no one had ever been there. The next morning, she brought the police. They found the house empty, every piece of furniture gone. The black curtains? Removed. The photos? Vanished. But in the corner of one bare room, a single photograph was left taped to the wall. It showed Lauren, mid-run, eyes wide, mouth open, captured perfectly in motion. And in the bottom corner, scrawled in faint ink, "She's watching you now." When Daniel found the listing, it felt like fate. Room for rent, $400 per month, utilities included, must be okay with quiet tenants. In a city where even the cheapest apartments were double that, it seemed like a miracle. He just lost his job, his savings were gone, and his friend's couch was no longer an option. Craigslist, for all its horror stories, had come through for him before. This time it would again. The address led him to a narrow, two-story Victorian home tucked between abandoned properties on a dead-end street. The paint peeled from the shutters, and the porch light flickered faintly. But Daniel didn't care. A roof was a roof. He rang the doorbell. The door opened almost immediately. A man stood there, mid-50s, thin, clean-shaven, wearing a faded cardigan and polite smile. "You must be Daniel," he said, voice soft and deliberate. "I'm Mr. Keene. Come in." Inside, the air was cold, unnaturally so. The house smelled faintly of bleach and old wood. The floors creaked under Daniel's feet as Mr. Keene led him down a narrow hallway lined with framed paintings. None had faces, Every person in the paintings had their features blurred out, like someone had wiped them away. "Your room's upstairs," Mr. Keene said. "Simple but private. You'll find I value quietness. My last tenant didn't respect that." He chuckled softly, but his eyes didn't match the smile. The room was small. A single bed, a dresser, and a window overlooking the empty street. Perfect fit for Daniel's budget. "I'll take it," Daniel said quickly. That night, after moving in, he tried to ignore the unsettling details. The way the walls seemed to hum faintly, the faint scraping noise from the vent, and the fact that every mirror in the house had been removed. He told himself it was just an eccentric old man and that he needed the room, no matter how strange the situation felt. At dinner, Mr. Keene talked about his love for photography. "I capture stillness," he said, voice low. "Moments before motion, people before they move. You can see their essence then, who they really are." Daniel nodded politely, though something about the phrasing made him uneasy. That night, he slept lightly, the unfamiliar creaks and sighs of the house keeping him alert. Around 3 a.m., a noise woke him, a soft clicking sound from somewhere near the corner of the room. He sat up, squinting in the dark. The sound came again. Click, click. He turned on the bedside lamp. The corner was empty, just a small vent cover and an old dresser. Then he saw it. A faint glimmer behind the vent, like a reflection. He got up slowly, knelt down, and peered through the slats. A lens. Someone had installed a small camera, aimed directly at his bed. His breath caught. He stumbled backward, heart hammering. He didn't know whether to scream or run. Finally, he grabbed his bag, shoved everything inside, and headed for the door. But when he reached the hallway, the air felt wrong, colder, thicker. At the bottom of the stairs, Mr. Keene stood motionless, hands clasped behind his back. His expression was calm, almost patient. "Leaving already?" he asked. Daniel's throat went dry. "There's a camera in my room." Keene tilted his head. "Yes," he said simply. "I like to keep an eye on my tenants." "That's illegal," Daniel stammered. "I'm calling the cops." Mr. Keene smiled faintly. "I think you'll find that's unnecessary. You see, I only record what interests me." Daniel took a step back, hand tightening on the doorknob. Keene's smile faded. The last tenant thought the same thing. He was loud. "I don't like loud people." There was a moment of silence. Heavy, suffocating. Then Daniel yanked the door open and bolted into the night. The cold air hit his face like ice as he sprinted down the empty street, never once looking back. When he finally reached the main road, he called the police from a gas station. They promised to investigate. 2 days later, Daniel returned with an officer. The house was quiet, door unlocked. Inside, everything was gone. No furniture, no paintings, no trace of life. Just an empty shell of a building with dust on the floors and spiderwebs in the corners. "Are you sure this was the place?" the officer asked. Daniel nodded. "Yes, I stayed here." The officer frowned. "This house has been empty for months. No utilities, no owner. It's condemned." Daniel felt his knees weaken. "No, that's impossible. He was here. His name was Keene. They searched the rooms. Nothing. But in the one he'd stayed in, the officer noticed something. Faint scratches along the wall behind the bed. They spelled out a single word. Quiet. Next to it, half covered by dust, lay a small object, a cracked camera lens, still faintly glinting under the light. When Daniel bent to pick it up, he saw the reflection of himself, distorted, stretched, and for the briefest second, he swore another figure stood behind him in the glass, still watching, waiting. It started with a simple delivery, a small, neatly taped box addressed to Hannah Cooper. She was a freelance artist who worked from home, rarely left the apartment, and had packages arriving almost daily from online orders and commissions. But this one was different. There was no return address, no label from a company, just her name, written in thick black ink, and beneath it, a strange marking, almost like a spiral or eye. She found it sitting outside her door on a gray, rainy afternoon. The hallway lights flickered, humming softly as she bent to pick it up. It was heavier than it looked. She turned it over in her hands, frowning. Maybe a client had sent it, she thought. Maybe someone wanted to surprise her. Inside her apartment, the quiet felt thicker than usual. The rain outside had turned into a dull roar, the city beyond her window blurred by mist. She set the box on her desk, hesitated for a moment, then carefully cut it open. Inside, wrapped in brown paper, was an old-fashioned camera. A Polaroid, the kind that printed photos instantly. Next to it lay a small folded note. "Take one picture tonight. You'll understand everything in the morning." Hannah felt a chill crawl down her spine. There was something off about the handwriting. Jagged, uneven, as if it had been written in a hurry. Still, curiosity won. She placed the camera on her windowsill and tried to forget about it. That night, around midnight, she was sketching when she heard it. A faint click, like the sound of a camera shutter. She froze. The Polaroid camera sat motionless on the sill, but a photo was slowly sliding out of it. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. The image was dark, grainy, her living room, empty. But in the corner, near the doorway, was a shadow. Not a trick of the light, not an object, the silhouette of a person standing perfectly still. She turned on every light in the apartment, her heart pounding. There was no one there. She checked the hallway, empty. The door was still locked. The next morning, she decided to throw the camera away. But before she did, she noticed another note lying where the first one had been. She swore it hadn't been there the night before. "Don't throw it away. You haven't finished yet." That was enough. She tossed the camera and the box into the dumpster outside and tried to move on. But the next day, a knock came at her door. A delivery man stood there, rain dripping from his jacket. "Package for Hannah Cooper," he said, handing her a box. It was the same one. Same handwriting. Same strange spiral. Her throat tightened. "Where did this come from?" she asked. He checked his clipboard. "No sender. Just says redelivery. Must have been returned." She slammed the door as soon as he left and backed away, her pulse racing. She didn't open it this time, just shoved it into her closet and tried to forget. But that night, the clicking started again. Louder now. Constant. It wasn't coming from the closet. It was coming from the hallway outside her apartment. Click. Pause. Click. She crept to the peephole, barely breathing. The hallway was dim, lit by a single buzzing bulb. And there, standing directly in front of her door, was a figure holding a Polaroid camera. Their face was hidden behind the viewfinder. Click. The flash lit up the entire hall for a split second. And in that moment, Hannah saw the impossible. The figure wasn't holding the camera. The camera was floating in front of them, suspended in the air, clicking by itself. She stumbled backward, slammed the deadbolt, and turned off the lights. Her phone was dead. Her body shook so hard she could barely dial 911 on the landline. The dispatcher's voice crackled faintly. "Ma'am, can you tell me your address?" Before she could answer, another click. The sound came from inside the apartment. The closet door creaked open on its own. The next few seconds blurred together. Hannah screamed, dropped the phone, ran toward the door, and yanked it open. The hallway was empty. The lights flickered again, buzzing like flies. She didn't even stop to grab her keys. She ran barefoot into the street, rain pouring down her face, heart pounding so loud she could barely hear. By the time the police arrived, the apartment was quiet again. They found the landline phone on the floor, the receiver swinging gently. In the middle of the living room was the Polaroid camera, clean, dry, perfectly placed. On the table beside it sat a single photograph. It showed Hannah, standing in the doorway, mouth open mid-scream, taken from inside the apartment. And beneath the photo, scrawled in the same jagged handwriting, "Perfect. Thank you for finishing it." For most people, cleaning houses was a side hustle. For Mira, it was survival. After her husband left and the bills piled up, Craigslist became her lifeline. A digital jungle of odd jobs and desperate offers. Most gigs were harmless. Deep cleans, end-of-lease scrubs, sometimes even hoarder homes. But one post caught her eye for all the wrong reasons. Cleaner needed. No questions. Cash payment. Must work alone. Address will be provided after confirmation. The message was signed only as J. No phone number, no details, just an email reply link. Mira hesitated, her gut whispering to stay away. But the pay was triple her usual rate, enough to cover rent and groceries for a month. So she replied. Within minutes, she got a response. Accepted. Arrive at 11 p.m. Sharp. House key under the mat. Don't go upstairs. Leave when done. It was strange, but she'd seen worse. Late-night cleanups for people moving in a hurry weren't unusual. Still, something about the don't go upstairs part sent a quiet shiver through her. By 10:45 that night, she was driving down a narrow country road, the kind where trees swallowed the moonlight and the world felt like it had stopped existing. Her GPS kept losing signal. When she finally spotted the house, an old 2-story farmhouse with chipped paint and boarded windows, her stomach turned. The porch light was on, faint and yellow. True to the email, a single key lay beneath the mat. Just another job, she whispered to herself, stepping inside. The air smelled of dust, bleach, and something faintly metallic. The living room was nearly empty. Just a couch covered in a sheet, a coffee table, and a few cardboard boxes. She put on her gloves and started cleaning, focusing on the kitchen first. Everything looked old and used, yet the sink was wet. She frowned. Someone had washed something recently. As she wiped the counters, she noticed dark smears along the floor. Faint, reddish stains leading toward the hallway. She tried not to think about it, scrubbing harder, humming softly just to fill the silence. But the silence wasn't empty. Every few minutes, she thought she heard something upstairs. A slow, dragging sound, followed by a soft thump. She froze each time, staring at the ceiling, waiting for it to stop. She tried to laugh it off. Rats, she said under her breath. Old houses always have them. Around midnight, she moved to the living room. As she lifted the sheet off the couch, a gust of cold air hit her. The windows were closed, but it felt like the temperature had dropped 10 degrees. Then she noticed something odd about the boxes stacked in the corner. They weren't moving boxes, they were storage bins, each labeled neatly in black marker. She leaned closer. Shoes, female, size 7. Hair, brown. Photos. Her pulse quickened. She pulled the lid off the last one. Inside were dozens of Polaroids, close-ups of women's faces. Some smiling, some crying, some asleep. Her hands shook as she flipped through them. Every face different. Every background the same house. And then she froze. The most recent photo, timestamped 2 nights ago, showed her standing by her car, taken from across the street. Her mouth went dry. She turned toward the window, heart slamming in her chest. The porch was empty. But outside, beyond the flicker of the streetlight, she thought she saw movement. A figure in the trees, standing perfectly still, watching. She grabbed her phone and tried to call 911, but there was no signal. Panic clawed at her throat. She turned, ready to bolt, and then heard it again. The dragging sound, louder this time, coming down the stairs. She froze, staring toward the dark hallway. "Hello?" she whispered, her voice cracking. No answer, just the sound of each slow step, creaking deeper into the floorboards. Her instincts screamed to run. She darted toward the door, fumbling with the lock, but it wouldn't turn. It was jammed. Behind her, the footsteps stopped. The air grew unnaturally still. And then, from the shadows at the top of the staircase, a voice, calm, male, deliberate. "You weren't supposed to come tonight." Myra's hands slipped from the knob. "Who's there?" she gasped. "You came too early," the voice said again, descending 1 step at a time. "You shouldn't have seen them yet." She backed away, grabbing the nearest object, a broom, and held it like a weapon. The man stepped into the dim light, tall, pale, wearing work clothes smeared with dust. His expression was blank, eyes hollow. He raised his hand, and in it was something small and glinting. Her phone. "You dropped this outside," he said softly. "I was just bringing it back." Myra's entire body trembled. "Stay away from me." But he only smiled faintly. "You should have waited for me to finish cleaning first." And before she could move, the lights went out. She screamed, stumbling through the dark, knocking over furniture as she ran. She found the back door, slammed it open, and sprinted into the field behind the house, not daring to look back. By the time she reached the road, her lungs burned and her legs barely worked. A passing truck stopped when the driver saw her, terrified and shaking, covered in dirt and tears. When police arrived an hour later, the house was empty. No man, no boxes, no Polaroids, except one taped to the wall by the stairs. It showed Myra, taken from behind as she ran through the doorway. And beneath it, scrawled in black ink, "You missed a spot." When Mark saw the Craigslist post, he thought it was a joke. "Roommate needed. Must move in tonight. Quiet house. No questions asked. $500 per month." It was posted by someone named S.K. with a single blurry photo of a hallway. No phone number, just an email address. Mark, desperate after being evicted from his apartment the week before, didn't hesitate. He replied immediately. The reply came within minutes. "Come to 422 Elm Street. Midnight. Ring twice. I'll open." Sounded strange. Too strange. But Mark was tired, broke, and desperate. He figured it would just be a room for the night, and he could leave in the morning. At 11:50 p.m., he pulled up to Elm Street. The neighborhood was deserted. Cracked sidewalks, street lamps flickering in the cold October wind. Number 422 was an old brownstone with peeling paint, the front door warped and sagging. He rang the bell twice. The door opened instantly. No one was there. Mark stepped inside cautiously. The air was thick, musty, smelling of dust and something faintly metallic. The hallway stretched into darkness, with a dim light flickering far ahead. A note lay on a small table beside the door. "Upstairs. Second door on the left." He hesitated but followed the directions. The stairs creaked under his feet. At the second floor, he found the door slightly ajar. He pushed it open and stepped inside. The room was sparse. A mattress on the floor, a lamp with no bulb, and a small nightstand. A faint hum filled the air. He noticed a desk against the wall with a laptop open, the screen glowing. The desktop background was a photograph of him, taken tonight. His heart pounded. He turned quickly, scanning the shadows. The door shut with a soft click behind him. Mark spun around. The hallway was still. But then the sound began. A faint whisper, almost indistinguishable, coming from somewhere deep within the house. It was his name. Mark. The voice was low, breathless, unnatural. He grabbed the laptop and opened it. There were dozens of folders, each filled with images. Every photo was of him, in his old apartment, in the grocery store, walking down the street earlier that day. The timestamps were precise, showing every moment of his life for the past week. A sudden noise from the hallway made him freeze. Slow footsteps. He bolted to the door, but it wouldn't budge. The doorknob was locked. Panic rising, he searched the room. On the desk, there was a phone with a message blinking. "You agreed to move in. Now it's your turn." The footsteps grew louder, closer. Mark backed away toward the bed. The hum was now a low chant, an eerie whisper of names he didn't recognize. The second door down the hall creaked open. From the darkness, a figure stepped out, tall, wearing a hooded cloak, face hidden. In one hand was a camera, in the other, a key. The figure spoke, voice barely audible. "Welcome home." Mark lunged for the door, ramming his shoulder against it. It stayed locked. He heard laughter behind him, slow, hollow, echoing. The figure stepped closer, the camera's lens glinting faintly in the light. Mark raised his hands, trembling. "Don't," he whispered. The figure tilted its head and pressed the camera's shutter. Click. The flash burned his eyes. When he blinked, the figure was gone. The door was unlocked. But Mark didn't stop running. He didn't stop until he was blocks away. The next day, curiosity and fear pulled him back to Elm Street. The brownstone was gone. The lot was empty, grass overgrowing where it once stood. When he searched the area, he found something in the dirt where the front steps had been. A single Polaroid. It showed him sleeping. Beneath it, in the same jagged handwriting as the Craigslist post, were 3 chilling words. "You moved in." Jenna moved into her new apartment excited for a fresh start. It had been a tough year. A breakup, a layoff, and months of couch surfing. Craigslist had been her lifeline again. The listing was simple: 1-bedroom apartment, cheap rent, close to downtown. The photos looked promising, even if the price seemed suspiciously low. The building was older, 4 stories high, with a chipped brick facade and a faint smell of mildew in the stairwell. Jenna's first night was quiet. The hum of the heater filled her living room, and the soft sound of traffic below lulled her to sleep. But by the second night, something felt off. She began to notice noises from the apartment below. Faint footsteps, soft dragging sounds, and the occasional muffled whisper. She told herself it was nothing. Old buildings creak. People have neighbors. She drifted back to sleep. On the third night, the sounds grew louder. Heavy footsteps pacing below her bedroom, accompanied by an irregular clicking, like the sound of a camera shutter. Jenna sat up in bed, straining to hear. She imagined it was someone with a hobby, maybe a photographer. Still, her stomach tightened. She asked the landlord, who shrugged. Old pipes, maybe. Noise travels. That answer didn't comfort her. A week later, she was cooking dinner when she heard a loud crash from below. Her heart thudded. She called the landlord, but the call went unanswered. Grabbing her phone, she decided to investigate. At the bottom of the stairs, the hallway was dark. She pressed the button for the apartment below. No answer. She knocked. The door creaked open slightly. Inside was pitch black. A faint smell of rotting paper filled the air. She stepped in. The apartment was empty, except for the living room wall, covered in photographs. Hundreds of them, all taken inside her apartment. There were photos of her sleeping, photos of her entering the apartment, photos of her moving around in the kitchen. Each picture perfectly timed, taken without her knowing. Her breath caught. She spun around and froze. The clicking sound was behind her. A camera flash burst in the darkness. Jenna dropped her phone, heart pounding. The light from her flashlight revealed a staircase leading further down, into a basement that shouldn't exist. She heard the whisper again, clearer this time. Her name, Jenna. Against every instinct, she descended. The air grew colder. Her flashlight flickered. The walls were lined with more photos, hundreds, each pinned with sharp clips. Every single one of her. Every moment of her life since she moved in. At the bottom of the stairs, a shadow moved. A figure stepped forward, tall, thin, with a camera hanging from his neck. His face was obscured, but his smile was wide. "I'm glad you noticed," he said softly. "You're my favorite subject." Jenna turned to run, but the door slammed shut behind her. The last thing she heard before everything went silent was the click of a camera shutter. The next morning, the landlord found the apartment empty. No sign of Jenna, only a Polaroid on her bed. It showed her face, eyes wide in terror, and underneath, scrawled in dark ink, "Still watching."